He told his wife he never wanted to see her again. 3 years later, she came back with a child who had his eyes. What hidden truth had she carried alone? Was it too late to mend the unforgivable? Witness a gripping tale of heartbreaking dismissal, a shocking discovery, and the relentless pursuit of a second chance. Watch now and tell us. Can some mistakes ever truly be forgiven? The CEO's unseen legacy. A second chance at fatherhood London was humming that evening, wrapped in the usual chaos of black cab horns, blinking lights, and the constant rush of people chasing something. Success, escape, or simply the next tube. Inside a sleek, cold glass tower in Canary Wharf, Alexander Thorne stood by his office window, staring at the skyline that no longer inspired him. 35 years old, CEO of a major investment firm, a self-made millionaire with power and presence to match. Alex was the man other men envied. Dark brown hair, eyes like polished ice, an apartment in the clouds, and a reputation for being utterly untouchable. And yet, as he loosened his tie and checked his watch, the silence in his life was starting to scream. When he finally arrived home that night, later than usual, thanks to an emergency investor call, he noticed the difference before he even opened the door. The lights inside the penthouse were dimmed, but not in their usual cozy way. The air felt wrong, stiller than it should have. Emma's shoes were gone. The scent of her perfume, always faint and floral, was missing from the air. He stepped inside and froze. Emma stood near the entrance with a suitcase beside her and her coat already on. She looked calm, almost practiced, like she had been rehearsing this moment in her mind for months. Her face wasn't angry. It was simply finished. That was the part that hit hardest. Not the suitcase, not the coat, but that expression, the quiet kind of goodbye that doesn't need yelling to cut deep. He set down his keys and straightened his shoulders. "What is this?" "I'm leaving," she said, her voice soft but clear, tight. He didn't move. "For how long?" "I don't know," he sighed, rubbing his temples as if she were one more problem to manage, one more detail in a life packed with them. "You're being dramatic, Emma. This isn't how we fix things." She gave a small, almost sad smile. "We don't fix anything, Alex. You work. You vanish. You talk to everyone but me. I've been alone in this marriage for years." He looked at her, jaw tight, tone clipped. "I gave you everything. This home, this life." "No," she interrupted. "You gave me a role, something pretty for the public, someone who stood beside you at galas. You gave me silence. You gave me space. Too much of it." He turned away, trying to suppress the sting that crept beneath his skin. He hated this, the emotion, the rawness, the loss of control. "Then go," he muttered, voice low. "If you need to leave, leave. I don't care. I don't want to see you." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Maybe with sadness, maybe with something else. But she didn't cry. She didn't fight. She simply picked up the handle of her suitcase and walked to the lift. She didn't tell him she was pregnant. She didn't say that she'd spent the last few weeks terrified, waiting for a reason to stay. He hadn't given her one. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Alex stood alone in the hallway, staring at the space where she had been. The silence settled in again, this time heavier, colder. He walked through the apartment, back to the kitchen, the living room, their bedroom. Everything was still there. Furniture, artwork, clean countertops. But it was all hollow now, like a museum of a life someone had already left behind. He poured himself a drink, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared into the dark. He didn't call her, didn't chase her, and he never once considered what she might have been carrying inside her when she walked away. A chilling goodbye, a devastating consequence. What profound regret do you think Alex will feel when the truth is revealed? Share your predictions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the shocking return. 3 years passed like a blurred reel of meetings, mergers, flights, and boardrooms. Alexander Thorne's life, from the outside, had only grown more impressive. His firm was now one of the most influential in the country. He had been featured on the cover of multiple financial magazines, and he was invited to speak at global economic summits. People called him relentless, sharp, unshakable. He had become exactly what he had always chased. But deep down, everything felt numb. Nights were silent. Mornings were mechanical. His home, though still pristine, felt like a model apartment, perfect on the surface, but untouched by real life. He rarely thought about Emma. Or at least, he told himself that. Her name was a ghost he refused to say aloud. Whenever it surfaced in his mind, he buried it under numbers, emails, and obligations. What he never allowed himself to wonder about, ever, was whether she had moved on, or if she had been hiding something that night she left. Regret was a luxury he refused to admit he had. It was a rainy evening in spring when the unexpected happened. Alex returned home from work early for once, something he almost never did. The lift doors to the penthouse opened, and he stepped into the lobby area, scrolling through emails on his phone. He barely noticed the woman standing near the security desk until her voice, soft, unsure, cut through the quiet. "Alex?" He looked up, and his breath stalled. Emma was standing there, soaked from the rain, her blonde hair slightly longer now, her features thinner, but still painfully familiar. She looked exactly like he remembered, and yet completely different. Stronger, wiser, and next to her stood a little girl, no more than 2 years old. The child held Emma's hand tightly, her blue eyes wide, curious, and incredibly familiar. She had dark brown hair, a little wild from the wind, and the same piercing gaze that Alex saw in the mirror every day. He stared at the girl, then at Emma, and back again. "What is this?" he asked slowly, his voice low and guarded. Emma crouched slightly to adjust the girl's jacket, then stood up straight and met his eyes. "This is Lily," she said. "She's your daughter." He blinked, but couldn't find any humor. "What kind of game is this?" "It's not a game," Emma said, her voice calm, firm. "I was pregnant when I left. I didn't tell you because you didn't want to see me. You made that clear, and I wasn't going to beg for space in a life you'd already shut me out of." His chest tightened, but he kept his expression cold. "And now? Why come back now?" "Because she's asking questions," Emma said. "She wants to know who her father is. And as much as I've tried to explain, I can't be the only voice in her life. She deserves to know. Whether or not you want to be involved is your decision. But I won't lie to her. Not about you." Lily peeked out from behind Emma's leg and looked up at Alex, her small hand tightening around her mother's fingers. He felt something shift inside him. Shock, guilt, recognition, fear. He cleared his throat, suddenly uncertain. "A test," he said. "DNA, I want proof." Emma didn't flinch. "Fine. Do whatever you need. I didn't come here to convince you. I came because she deserves truth. And if the man you are now can't handle that, we'll go." She turned, gently guiding the little girl back toward the lift. Lily glanced back one last time, her blue eyes locked with his. And then they were gone. Alex stood frozen in the lobby, drenched in silence. His phone vibrated in his hand, but he ignored it. For the first time in years, The past had walked directly into his present, and it had a name, a face, and the eyes of a child he never knew he had. The shock of a lifetime. How would you react if you discovered you had children you never knew existed? What's the first thing you'd do? Share your raw emotions and plans in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the unfolding journey. The test came back within a week. A simple envelope delivered by courier, resting on his glass kitchen counter like a bomb waiting to go off. Alex sat staring at it for over an hour, untouched, unopened, as if it had the power to undo everything that kept him composed. When he finally broke the seal and unfolded the document, the world narrowed into a single, inescapable truth. 99.98% probability of paternity. Lily was his daughter, his blood, his reflection. The first thing he felt wasn't joy. It was nausea, a kind of crushing awareness that while his company had grown, his portfolio expanded, and his reputation sharpened, he had missed the birth of his child, her first steps, her first words. He hadn't just failed to be a father. He had failed to be human. He didn't call Emma immediately. He needed time to absorb the weight of it, to understand what it meant beyond biology. But Emma, true to her word, reached out first. Her voice over the phone was calm, but not cold. She told him they were still in the city, staying temporarily in a rental apartment near Hyde Park. She said Lily had been asking questions about the tall man in the lobby, and then she said something that surprised him. She's curious, not angry. She doesn't know enough to be hurt yet. But she will, eventually, if we don't do something about this. Alex asked if he could see her. Not in a courtroom, not in a confrontation, just a meeting. Emma agreed, cautiously. A coffee shop on the Upper West Side, neutral territory. Emma would sit at a nearby table within earshot, but let them have space. The moment Lily walked in, wearing a little red coat, with her dark hair curled at the ends, Alex forgot how to breathe. She looked even more like him than he remembered. The way she scanned the room, the way her fingers fidgeted with the zipper of her jacket, the way she didn't smile easily. He recognized himself in all of it. "Hi," he said when she stood in front of him. He was sitting to avoid towering over her. His voice was gentle, unsure. Lily tilted her head. "You're the man from the tall building," she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I am," he nodded. "My name's Alex." She looked at him curiously. "That's not a dad name." He laughed quietly. "Well, I've never been a dad before. I'm still learning." She didn't respond right away. She climbed onto the chair opposite him, her legs too short to touch the floor. She grabbed a paper straw and twisted it into a spiral while watching him from under her lashes. "Do you like frogs?" she asked suddenly. He blinked. "Frogs? Yes, I do. I have a frog book. I've never really thought about frogs," he admitted, smiling. "But maybe you can teach me." She seemed to consider that for a moment, then gave a tiny nod. Okay, they sat for 30 minutes. She talked more than he expected, about books, about her favorite cartoons, about a dream she had where her toothbrush came to life. He listened to every word like it was gold. Emma watched from a few tables away, not interfering, not smiling, just observing like someone too afraid to hope. When they stood to leave, Lily looked up at him. "Are you going to come back?" "I want to," he said honestly. "Do you want me to?" She shrugged. "Maybe." He could work with that. He walked them to the corner where Emma hailed a cab. As she buckled Lily into the seat, she looked over her shoulder at him. "She likes you," she said simply. "That's rare." He didn't reply. He just stood there, heart pounding, watching the cab pull away. For the first time in his life, Alexander Thorne realized that no amount of money, power, or reputation would ever match the gravity of that one small word, maybe. It was all he had. But it was enough to start. A tiny maybe sparks a colossal shift. What do you think Alex's first steps will be in proving himself worthy of Lily's and Emma's trust? Share your hopes for this fragile new beginning in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the unfolding journey. The weeks that followed became a strange kind of in-between space for Alex. He was still running a company, still attending board meetings and handling multi-million-pound decisions, but something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking only in profits and projections. He was thinking in crayons, picture books, nap times, and the sound of a little girl's voice telling him about frogs and clouds, and how orange juice was better when it had just a little pulp. His calendar, once packed with corporate strategy sessions, now had blocks carved out with one word written in permanent ink: Lily. At first, the visits were short. A walk in the park, an hour in the children's section of the library, a hot chocolate shared at a bakery where Lily insisted on picking the table. Emma always stayed close, but never hovered. She gave space, even when it was clear how carefully she was watching. She was protective, as she had every right to be, but she was also fair. She was letting Alex try. She was watching to see what kind of man he would choose to be this time. Lily was cautious. She didn't hug him. She didn't call him duh. She didn't ask him personal questions. But she kept showing up. She allowed him into her world, little by little, like someone opening a window 1 inch at a time to see if the air outside could be trusted. Alex was patient. He didn't push. He read every parenting book he could get his hands on. He watched videos late at night on how to talk to kids without overwhelming them, how to listen without interrupting, how to be present without performing. He showed up early to every visit, waited without checking his phone, and always brought something small. Stickers, coloring books, a toy frog once that Lily pretended not to like, but carried in her backpack the next time they met. There were moments when it hurt more than he expected. One afternoon, as they sat on a bench near the lake and watched ducks paddle by, Lily turned to him and said, "Do you know how to braid hair?" When he said no, she nodded thoughtfully and replied, "Mummy does." She wasn't being mean. She wasn't comparing. But the truth in her voice cut deep. She had a history he hadn't been part of, a life that had moved on without him. She didn't say it, but it was written all over her face. She didn't need him. Not really. Not yet. Still, something kept growing. One rainy day, when Emma dropped Lily off at the museum, she handed Alex an extra umbrella and simply said, "We'll be a little late picking her up. Is that okay?" He nodded without hesitation. He didn't realize until hours later what that moment meant. She had trusted him, fully, for the first time, with their daughter. That afternoon, they wandered through the dinosaur exhibit, Lily holding his hand the entire time without noticing she was doing it. She asked questions about fossils, about meteors, about why the T-Rex had such small arms. He made up silly answers, and she laughed. At one point, she looked up at him and said, "You're different from the first time." He asked what she meant, and she shrugged, as kids do, and said, "You were more frozen." The word stayed with him for days. He wasn't frozen anymore. Something inside him was thawing, slowly, painfully, beautifully. And for the first time, he wasn't trying to go back and undo the past. He was just trying to be here, in the present, with a little girl who didn't owe him anything, but who was beginning, cautiously, to let him in. One evening, after dropping Lily off, Emma lingered at the building's entrance instead of walking away. The night was quiet, and the city seemed far away, muted beneath the falling snow. "You're doing better than I expected," she said softly. Alex looked at her, not defensive, not triumphant. Just honest. I'm doing the best I can. She nodded, wrapping her coat tighter around herself. She talks about you. A lot. More than she did before. She still doesn't call me Dad, he said. She will. When it feels right. It's not a title, Alex. It's a relationship. You're building it. He didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Only gratitude. Only the quiet, growing hope that maybe, just maybe, the girl who once didn't know his name might one day call him something more. Something that meant home. A quiet, steady rebuilding of a family. What do you think the future holds for Alex and Emma, beyond the immediate joy? Can true forgiveness blossom from such a painful past? Share your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the truly emotional conclusion. The shift came without warning, as shifts often do. It was a late afternoon in early summer when Emma called, her voice calm but unusually direct. She said she had been offered a new job in Boston, an opportunity too good to pass up. Higher pay, flexible hours, a leadership role in a firm she had admired for years. She wasn't calling to ask for permission. She was informing him, respectfully but firmly. The move would happen at the end of the month, and of course she would be taking Lily. Alex stood in the middle of his office when he got the call, holding the phone to his ear while staring out the window, his reflection barely visible in the glass. The city sprawled beneath him, buzzing with opportunity and motion, and yet all of it felt like white noise. He had expected something like this eventually. Emma had always been ambitious, always looking for the next challenge, but the reality of it struck with more force than he could admit out loud. She was leaving. Again. And this time, she wasn't walking out alone. She was taking his daughter with her. "You're just going to leave?" he asked, trying to keep his voice level. "I'm not disappearing," she replied. "We'll call, we'll visit. You can come to Boston. But this job matters to me, and Lily deserves stability." Alex closed his eyes. "I've just started to build something with her. You know that. You've seen it." "I know," Emma said, and for the first time in the call, he heard emotion slip into her voice. "That's why I told you now, so we could talk about it like adults, like parents. I'm not trying to hurt you, Alex, but it will," he said. "It already does." The silence that followed was long and heavy, full of things neither of them knew how to say. When they ended the call, it was with no resolution, only the understanding that something had to be done, and quickly. Alex called his lawyer the next day. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want courtrooms and affidavits and depositions. But he also couldn't just let Lily slip away. Not again. He had let that happen once, and it had cost him 3 years of her life. This time, he would not stand by. The paperwork was filed within a week, a formal petition for joint custody, with a specific objection to out-of-state relocation. Emma was shocked when she received it, not because she didn't expect resistance, but because of how serious it was. The documents were precise, thorough, professional, but not aggressive. There were no personal attacks, no dramatic accusations, just facts. And one line that stood out more than the rest. The petitioner believes it is in the child's best interest to have continued consistent access to both parents. The court date came quickly. Too quickly. They sat across from each other in the family courtroom, both dressed in muted tones, both with eyes that looked tired and hearts that seemed stretched thin. Lily stayed with a court-appointed specialist in a nearby room, coloring with markers and chatting about frogs and space rockets, while her parents fought quietly and politely over who would get to watch her grow up. Alex's lawyer presented the case efficiently. He had become an active presence in Lily's life. He had proof of visits, photos, school events, even a video of them reading together at the library. He was no longer the absentee father who let her walk away 3 years ago. He had changed. He had earned the right to remain. Emma didn't deny any of it. She spoke with grace, explaining her reasons for the move, how much thought had gone into it, how she believed she was doing what was best for their daughter. She didn't attack Alex. In fact, at one point, she even said, "He's become a good father. I see that, and I'm proud of what he's doing." It wasn't enough to end the court process, but it shifted the mood. Then came the moment no one had fully prepared for. The judge wanted to hear from Lily. She was only 4, but old enough to understand simple questions. With both parents' consent, she was brought into the room with a specialist who guided the conversation gently. The courtroom waited as the child's words were relayed back through official notes. Her answers were innocent, yet delivered with unexpected clarity. "I like being with Mommy because she sings songs at night," Lily had said. "But I like being with Alex too. He listens when I talk. He doesn't rush." When asked where she wanted to live, she had paused and whispered, "Can I stay with both?" The courtroom fell silent. That one question undid the tension more effectively than any lawyer could. The judge leaned back, took a breath, and said something that stayed with Alex for a long time. "This child isn't a puzzle to be solved. She's a person to be supported, and you both need to grow into that." The final ruling allowed Emma to take the job, but only if Alex was granted an equal role. The judge proposed a shared custody arrangement with scheduled flights, extended visits, and required parental coordination. Alex would be part of school decisions, medical care, summer plans, and everything else that mattered. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was a bridge. After the hearing, Emma met him outside the courthouse. She looked tired, but something in her expression was softer than before. "She asked if she could stay with both of us," Alex said quietly. Emma nodded. "That's the only thing I cared about, really, that she felt safe enough to say it." They stood there for a moment, no longer as enemies, not quite as friends. Just two people bound together by something deeper than pain or paperwork. A little girl who had reminded them both of what mattered most. A child's innocent wish reshapes their fractured lives. What do you think the future holds for this unconventional family? Can Alex and Emma truly learn to co-parent and perhaps rediscover love? Share your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the beautiful conclusion. The first few months after the custody ruling felt like stepping onto a tightrope suspended between 2 cities, 2 lives, and one small heart in the middle. Coordinating schedules between London and Boston wasn't easy. Flights were arranged, calendars shared, routines rewritten. It required patience, compromise, and constant communication. Things that had once seemed impossible between Alex and Emma. But now, for Lily's sake, they both tried. And sometimes, to their quiet surprise, it worked. Alex rented a small apartment in Boston to avoid disrupting Lily's school life. It wasn't luxurious like his Canary Wharf penthouse, but it was warm and full of things that mattered. A bookshelf with her favorite stories, framed drawings she had made for him, and a hand-painted Lily's Corner sign she insisted on taping to her bedroom wall. He cooked her breakfast on weekends, learned how to braid her hair, badly at first, but with enough practice to earn her giggles, and even attended her preschool's Dress Like Your Hero Day, showing up in a business suit with a silly homemade cape just because she asked. Every week, he made sure their time together felt like something stable, not borrowed. It wasn't about spoiling her or making up for lost years anymore. It was about consistency, presence, showing up for the bedtime stories and the scraped knees and the tears when her toy frog got lost in a grocery store. These things, he learned, mattered far more than anything money could buy. There were challenges, too. Sometimes Lily would cry when it was time to leave one parent for the other. Sometimes she would act out, overwhelmed by transitions. She once asked him why grown-ups made things so complicated, and Alex had no good answer. He just pulled her close and promised he was learning. And he meant it. His relationship with Emma began to shift as well. They started to find rhythm in the way they co-parented. Conversations that had once been clipped and defensive now held moments of softness, even humor. They began to share stories about Lily's quirks, laugh over her stubbornness, worry together when she had a fever. And every so often, during these shared moments, something unspoken would pass between them. A flicker of what used to be mixed with the unfamiliar ease of who they were becoming. One quiet evening in December, after Lily had fallen asleep in his apartment, Emma stopped by to pick up a school project Lily had left behind. It was late, and snow had just started to fall, soft flakes piling on the windowsill. She stepped inside and paused in the doorway of Lily's room, watching her sleep. Alex stood beside her, silent, unsure if he should say anything. "She looks so much like you when she's thinking," Emma whispered. "But she laughs like I did at her age." Alex nodded. "She's better than both of us." Emma smiled faintly, still looking at their daughter. "Maybe because she has both of us now." They didn't speak for a moment, wrapped in a shared silence that felt gentle instead of heavy. Then she turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "I found something the other day," she said, "when we were moving. A letter. One you wrote, years ago. You never sent it." His stomach turned. He remembered the letter. A clumsy, too-late attempt at apology, written the night she left but never delivered. "I read it," she added. "I'm glad I didn't read it back then. I wouldn't have believed a word of it. But now," she trailed off, then looked up at him. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't nostalgic either. It was something gentler, harder to name. "Now I think maybe you meant it." "I did," he said quietly. She nodded again, then walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of winter air and something that felt almost like peace. That night, after closing the door and checking on Lily once more, Alex stood alone in the quiet of his apartment. He thought about the time he had lost, the version of himself that let people walk away, the man who had once said, "I don't want to see you," to the only person who ever truly saw him. And now, here he was, standing on the other side of that moment, changed not by success or redemption, but by a little girl with dark brown hair and sky-blue eyes who had taught him how to show up, how to stay, how to be still, and how to begin again. A painful letter read, and a new understanding dawns. What do you think this quiet progress means for Alex and Emma's personal relationship? Can their own love be rekindled amidst shared parenting? Share your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the beautiful culmination. Spring came slowly to Boston, brushing away the last clinging signs of winter with soft winds and trees that began to bloom in pale pinks and early green. Lily's world, now divided between two cities, had begun to feel whole in ways no one had expected. She moved between homes like someone who had always known how to navigate two sets of rhythms. And for the first time, Alex didn't feel like a visitor in her life. He felt like a father. He had started rearranging his work around her schedule. Business trips were booked only on weeks she was with Emma. Late meetings were held remotely or rescheduled altogether. His priorities had shifted so completely that even his closest colleagues noticed, though no one dared question it. They simply watched as the man who once measured time only in deadlines now measured it in bedtime stories, finger paintings, and "Daddy, can I show you something" moments. The apartment he'd rented in Boston began to transform. It no longer felt temporary. Lily had filled it with her presence. A tiny keyboard in the corner, shelves lined with books and stuffed animals, glittery art taped to the fridge. On weekends, they made pancakes, always too thick, always a little burnt, but always eaten with sticky fingers and laughter. She liked to sit on the kitchen counter while he cooked, swinging her legs and offering unsolicited advice. "Don't forget the vanilla this time," she'd say, watching him like a tiny supervisor. "Last time, it tasted like nothing." Emma, too, seemed more at ease. She and Alex had begun speaking more freely, exchanging updates without tension, even sharing the occasional joke when they dropped Lily off. And every so often, during these shared moments, something unspoken would pass between them. A flicker of what used to be mixed with the unfamiliar ease of who they were becoming. One quiet evening in December, after Lily had fallen asleep in his apartment, Emma stopped by to pick up a school project Lily had left behind. It was late, and snow had just started to fall, soft flakes piling on the windowsill. She stepped inside and paused in the doorway of Lily's room, watching her sleep. Alex stood beside her, silent, unsure if he should say anything. "She looks so much like you when she's thinking," Emma whispered. "But she laughs like I did at her age." Alex nodded. "She's better than both of us." Emma smiled faintly, still looking at their daughter. "Maybe because she has both of us now." They didn't speak for a moment, wrapped in a shared silence that felt gentle instead of heavy. Then she turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "I found something the other day," she said. "When we were moving. A letter. One you wrote, years ago. You never sent it." His stomach turned. He remembered the letter. A clumsy, too-late attempt at apology, written the night she left, but never delivered. "I read it," she added. "I'm glad I didn't read it back then. I wouldn't have believed a word of it. But now—" She trailed off, then looked up at him. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't nostalgic either. It was something gentler, harder to name. "Now I think maybe you meant it." "I did," he said quietly. She nodded again, then walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of winter air and something that felt almost like peace. That night, after closing the door and checking on Lily once more, Alex stood alone in the quiet of his apartment. He thought about the time he had lost, the version of himself that let people walk away. The man who had once said, "I don't want to see you," to the only person who ever truly saw him. And now, here he was, standing on the other side of that moment, changed not by success or redemption, but by a little girl with dark brown hair and sky-blue eyes who had taught him how to show up, how to stay, how to be still, and how to begin again. The morning of Lily's 6th birthday arrived with the kind of sunshine that made everything feel golden. The apartment smelled of vanilla and fresh strawberries, the remnants of the homemade cake Alex had stayed up late decorating the night before. There were balloons taped to the walls, a hand-drawn banner with crooked letters hanging across the living room window, and a stack of wrapped gifts on the kitchen table. But the brightest part of it all was Lily herself, wearing a sparkly silver dress, her hair curled at the ends just the way she liked it, and a grin wide enough to light up the entire block. They had decided, all three of them, to host the party at the local community garden where Lily liked to chase butterflies in the summer. It was simple, colorful, open, and full of the things that made her happiest: flowers, open sky, and friends. Emma arrived early to help set up, and when Alex saw her step out of the car carrying 2 trays of cupcakes and a basket of party favors, he couldn't help but smile. She wore a soft blue sundress, her hair tied back, her eyes bright. There was no tension between them now. There hadn't been for a long time. They moved around each other easily, naturally, finishing each other's thoughts, laughing when Lily made up her own rules for the party games, and sharing glances that spoke of things both old and quietly new. The guests began to arrive, classmates, neighbors, a few cousins who'd flown in with their parents. The air filled with chatter and music, the scent of lemonade and frosting, and the sounds of children shouting over who got the last piece of watermelon. Alex watched it all, amazed by how full his life had become. There was a time, not long ago, when he wouldn't have been able to handle this much chaos, this much emotion. But now, he felt steady, present, grateful. At the center of it all was Lily, spinning in circles with her friends, her laughter bubbling up like a song. She moved freely between Alex and Emma, grabbing one hand, then the other, making them dance, making them sit beside her during cake, making them both part of her world, with no hesitation. To her, this was normal. 2 parents, 1 family. No tension, no cracks. Just love, rebuilt with time and intention. As the party wound down, the sun casting long golden shadows across the garden, the children gathered for one last moment. Lily's teacher, who had kindly offered to help coordinate the activities, announced that Lily wanted to say something. The kids quieted, the parents gathered around, and Lily stood on a wooden crate with a plastic crown tilted on her head. She looked out at everyone, her blue eyes shining, and said, "Thank you for coming to my party. It's the best birthday ever. But I want to say something for my mummy and my daddy." The crowd went still. Alex and Emma exchanged a quick look, unsure of what was coming. Lily held up a small piece of paper she had folded and unfolded a dozen times that day. "I wrote a wish," she said, "and I want to say it now." She cleared her throat, her voice careful but strong. "My wish is that we always stay together, not just on birthdays, but every day. Because when we're all together, it feels like the sun is always out, even when it rains." There was a moment of silence before the applause began, soft at first, then warm and full. Emma wiped at the corner of her eye. Alex blinked more than he needed to. After the guests had gone, after the folding chairs were packed, and the last cupcake was wrapped in foil, they stood in the quiet together, just the 3 of them. Lily leaned against Alex's leg, sleepy but content, and Emma stood close beside him, her hand brushing his. "She's something," Emma whispered. "She's everything," Alex said. Emma looked up at him, her face thoughtful. "You know, we could start small. Not rush, but maybe see where this goes." Alex didn't speak for a moment. He looked at her, then at Lily, then back again. He reached out and took Emma's hand fully this time, not just a brush or a moment. A choice. "I already know where it goes," he said quietly. "Home." As they walked back toward the car, Lily between them holding both their hands, the sky above them slowly shifted from gold to lavender. The evening was calm, but alive. Not perfect, but real. A family, remade. Not from what they used to be, but from who they had become. Stronger, braver, together. This ending is powerful in its quietness. It doesn't rely on dramatic twists or a perfect reconciliation. It earns its weight through emotional growth, humility, and the choice to rebuild what was broken. Alex's transformation isn't sudden. It's slow, real, and deeply human. He doesn't win Emma back with money or apologies, but with presence, consistency, and the willingness to own his past without defending it. Emma's decision to let him in again is equally courageous, not out of weakness, but from strength, choosing to forgive not because she forgot, but because she saw who he had become. What makes the ending satisfying is that it doesn't offer fantasy. it offers hope. It shows that people can change, that love can survive even through betrayal, and that sometimes the most unexpected second chances are the ones we're most afraid to want. The twin girls, unknowingly, become the heart of the story, not just because they represent a hidden truth, but because they remind both adults what it means to love without conditions and to believe in the possibility of healing. It's a quiet triumph, and those, I think, are the most lasting kind.